something that is different from ourselves. We don't think about including our pancreas, we don't think about including our lungs because they're in us, they're part of us. We don't have to think about that. It feels, internal to us. But acceptance, tolerance, inclusion, there's a diversity we have to consider there outside of ourselves. And helpful to remember, this is also the opposite in terms of concept to division, duality. We talk a lot about, sublimating duality in Swami's teachings. And also the opposite of exclusion and rejection. And I'm sure, for all of us, hopefully places like the Sai Center, spiritual gatherings, spiritual meetings, hopefully feel like places of inclusion. But I'm sure we've all experienced other places in our lives where we felt these things on the bottom, where we felt excluded, where we maybe felt uncomfortable because we were the one who was different, or we were the one being rejected or not accepted into a space. So we have to remember that for some people who may be new coming into the Sai Center or any other environment, that sense of discomfort is there, right? Before they feel that acceptance, that love, that tolerance. And so that's part of our responsibility, certainly in our centers, is to have that welcomingness, that kind of Southern hospitality that allows us to accept and bring people into the fold when they come to the center. Next slide, please. It's also a little bit of a nice exercise to think about what or who is the focus when we think about these two concepts, right? We're thinking a little bit rationally, intellectually right now, that's okay. This is what the mind does, right? When we think of devotion, we always think about devotion to God. But then Swami's also taught us, and the concept of inclusion, all of these kind of concentric circles. We start with the self. Sometimes there's even rejection happening within our own self. We can reject parts of ourself, things that we think we are not supposed to be or experience. But even larger circles, family, oftentimes that is an easy thing to accept, maybe not. Friends, enlarging it into the community, humanity, earth, the universe. But what do we know about that little word over there, God, and all of these things? Are they different? They're not different. Next slide, please. So what does Swami have to say about this concept of inclusion? He says, let the different faiths exist, let them flourish, let the glory of God be sung in all languages in a variety of tunes. That should be the ideal. Respect the differences between the faiths and recognize them as valid, so far as they do not extinguish the flame of unity. So diversity and inclusion bringing us together, despite our differences. The followers of each religion call upon one God who is omnipresent and listens to their prayers, be they from any race or whatever language they speak. But it is the same God who confers happiness on all of mankind. No religion has a separate God, showering grace only on those who profess to abide by that faith. Next slide, please. Swami also says, and many of you may have already seen this quote from him, I have come to light the lamp of love in your heart. He goes on to say, I have not come on behalf of any exclusive religion. I have not come for publicity for a specific sect or creed or cause. I have not come to collect followers for a doctrine. I have no plan to attract disciples or devotees. It happened kind of naturally for Swami just because of his message and who he was. I have come to tell you of this unitary faith, this spiritual principle, this path of love, this virtue of love, this duty of love, this obligation of love. And I love that he brings it down to that simple, boiled down concept of love. Ultimately, inclusion has to include, it has to have that sense of love somewhere in it. Next slide, please. Other seekers from history that we may know or may not know from various traditions, ultimately the more and more they seek God, the more and more they find God within, they also develop this sense that the whole world is really one. So this is a famous story from Mirabai that some of you may already know, where Mirabai wanted to go and visit with a sage who was living in Vrindavan at the time when she was going on her pilgrimages to seek all the places of Krishna. But he said he would not meet Mirabai because she was a woman, and that would possibly make him impure. It would, make him less of a devotee. So Mira said, I did not know that there was any male in the universe besides Krishna. Are we not all female before him? I thought this was such a simple but beautiful way for Mira to illustrate for us that we're all seekers, and ultimately the only one power, the only one who's really pulling the strings and able to, lead our lives is Swami, is God. So again, inclusion there, right? We are all, from Mirabai's eyes, we are all women. We are all the gopis seeking Krishna. Next slide, please. And I picked Mira and Kabir because this is also a preview a little bit. I'm giving you some spoilers for the devotional program that is coming this evening. You'll hear more from Mira and Kabir during that program. And I had to do a little advertising because my husband Vivek is in that program playing Kabir. Kabir said, I was neither a Hindu nor a Muslim, a Mohammedan. I was both. I was nothing at all. And I can discern God in both. Next slide, please. Swami also says, you wear colored glasses and see everything through those glasses. If you correct your vision, the world will get corrected. If you reform yourselves, the world will get reformed. You create the world of your choice. You see many because you seek the many, not the one. Try to subsume the many in the one. The bodies of yourselves and others, the family, the village, the community, the state, the nation, the world. March towards more inclusive loyalties and reach the stage of unity in thought, word, and deed. This is the sadhana of love, for love is expansion, inclusion, mutualization. The individual has to be universalized and expanded into Vishwa Swarupa. Next slide, please. So we kind of already made this point. I think we all agree from some of that wisdom we just saw that there really is no difference ultimately. But it's up to us to find different tools, to find different ways in our day-to-day lives to demonstrate this for ourselves, to remind ourselves of this. Next slide. So this illustration here is meant to show you this little idea called an earworm. Has anyone heard the term earworm before? So earworm is the modern word that has been created to describe that feeling when you get a song stuck in your head. Very common experience, right? You get a song stuck in your head. Sometimes it's a bhajan. Sometimes it's your kid's Taylor Swift song that they were listening to in the car and you can't get that melody out of your head. But it also reminds us how powerful music can be. It kind of sinks into your brain. It actually is active on both sides of the brain. We know that from neurology. And so that is part of the reason why Swami also used music and bhajan as such a powerful tool to draw us into our devotion. So we're going to think about bhajan as an earworm, something that we sing in the Sai centers, but also it probably stays with you when you leave the center. Lines from bhajans come to you when you're working in the house, on your commute, in the shower, all these times. Next slide, please. So we're going to be looking at two different English bhajans. And the reason I chose English bhajans for this workshop is a few reasons. Number one, certainly when we have newcomers come to the Sai Center, they may be from South Asia, they may be from the Indian subcontinent, they may not be. And here we find ourselves in the United States, in America. It is nice to be able to sing in a language that really many of us use, right? And day to day, many of us are using English in our interactions at work, at the grocery store, with our children. And our children is also an important point to remember. Our children who may be growing up here in the States, their relationship with language, their relationship with bhajan is going to be a little bit different than ours, right? They may not have the same sense of native language that those of us or those of you who are born in India and immigrated to the United States have. For me personally, I was brought up here. I think in English. So English is a very kind of deep language to me. When I was in college, one of my majors was English literature, and I was able to see the beauty and the absolute eloquence that can happen in the English language. It's powerful for me. It's not more or less powerful than Sanskrit or Hindi or Telugu or other languages that I can learn to understand and learn to translate in devotional songs, but it's different. It hits me in a different way. Also, many of our English bhajans that we sing in the Sai Center, they're doing something a little bit different for us, right? When we sing a Krishna bhajan, we are singing to Krishna, or a Namavali where we are describing the features of God and remembering how, his beauty and his glory that way. But this kind of bhajan is doing something different for us. Does anybody know this bhajan? You've heard it before? Yes, okay. I'm gonna lead it. Please forgive me for any, missteps as I sing it. And I know we don't have accompaniment right now, but we can do lead and follow, right? Okay. I am God, I am God, I am no different from God. I am God, I am God, I am no different from God. I am the infinite supreme, the one reality. I am the infinite supreme, the one reality. I am Satchidananda Swarupa. I am Satchidananda Swarupa. I am Om Tat Sat Om. I am love, I am truth, I am peace eternally. I am ever pure delight, I am always full and free. Fear and grief can never touch me. I am Om Tat Sat Om. All right. Thank you. Thank you for following. Next slide, please. So, I'm going to lead you through a few little exercises related to this bhajan, things that you might mull over in the car ride on the way back from the center when you heard this bhajan. Who's the speaker? Who is the I in this bhajan? Yourself. Okay. Yourself. The higher self. Okay. Okay. The true self. Okay. When we sing it in the center, we sing it to a picture of Swami. Is it Swami also? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. The true self. Really, for me, this is what makes it interesting, right? This is a bhajan that was composed that we can sit and sing to a picture of Swami. We know that as we sing to him, this is the message he wants us to understand. I'm singing it. I am the I. As I sing it, that I, again, is pretty powerful. This is an affirmation. This is for me as a reminder to say to myself, remember, that higher self is here, right? When we think, for me, I think in English, so I is always part of my thoughts. Let me see if I can just adjust that a little bit to understand that I is the higher self within. But really, we know that this truth is true for Swami as well. So we are trying to bring those two together, right? This is not just us and not Swami, it's both. Okay, good. So I am God. Next slide. I want you to kind of keep that in mind, because now we're trying to be inclusive. We are trying to expand these ideas out. So let's play a little game called Is This God? And Can I Love This? You can think of both of those questions as you see the pictures on the next slides. This is Sai Gita. For those of you who may know or remember, this was the elephant who lived on Swami's ashram for many decades and was just a beloved devotee of Swami. Definitely a lot more than a regular elephant, if you want to say. And this is a lovely little depiction of Krishna. So, are these both God? Okay, yes. Can we love both of these? Yeah, it would be easy to hug both of them, right? To have that elephant trunk play with your hair. It would be very sweet. And we know that there's love here. Next slide. These are my two little ones. So, are these God? They're in my day-to-day life, so when they're being very cute and very sweet, yeah, they're God. I can see that. You can see that little spark in there, right? Sometimes the things that Prema says, I'm like, whoa, okay, you really remember. Somewhere in there you remember that you're God. And this one is just, Sakshi is just toddling around, totally innocent. There's a sweetness to both of them. Absolutely. You know that these are God. I can love both of these, give them a lot of my heart. Now Prema's getting a little bit older, right? Sometimes she bothers me. Sometimes she makes me a little bit angry. Sometimes I forget that she is God also living in my house. Sometimes she makes me forget that I am God as well. Next slide. This is something I'm not looking forward to as I become a parent as the kids get older, but many of you may also have had this experience with your kids. Either they're not listening because they're on a device, or we're not listening to them because we have a lot of adult things to do. What do you think? Is God here also? Yeah. Is there love here also? They're sorry? Hey, that's true. Because of love only, all of this is happening. That's a good way to think about it. Yes, of course. Okay, next slide. Let's get a little more challenging, maybe. Okay, work. Work, or this could be happening at home. It could be happening at school. Okay, is there God here? Yes, okay. We're remembering our bhajan, right? I am God, I am God. Hopefully, maybe both of them are thinking that as well. Is there love in this situation? What's that? She said it's like a harsh love. Maybe there's love somewhere underneath, but okay, yeah. I mean, that's something we remind ourselves sometimes between husband and wife relationships, right? There may be some bickering, there may be some fighting, but there's still that bond of love underneath, okay? Next slide, please. We are all familiar with this experience, I think. Dallas, Austin, Houston, I'm sure. Okay, is God here too? Do we feel love when we're driving? It's hard sometimes, right? This is when I really need to remember that bhajan and have that bhajan playing in the car. Okay, next slide. Okay, now just another little exercise. I want you all to just close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or you can look at the ground or look somewhere else, whatever is comfortable. And I want you to think about a difficult or uncomfortable situation, interaction that happened to you in the last week or two with another person. It could be a family member, it could be a coworker, it could be a stranger. Something that maybe just, it made you, like I said, very uncomfortable, angry, annoyed. You maybe forgot a little bit about your own equanimity. And I want you to keep that other person in mind. And have their picture, their portrait right up there in front of your mind's eye. Okay, everybody holding that image. Okay, open your eyes again. Next slide, please. Okay, I want us to just sing together in unison, okay? This is one of the things we can do with an English bhajan like this, is we can turn it around. Okay? I'll sing too, but let's just sing in unison together, okay? You are God, you are God, you are no different from God. You are the infinite supreme, the one reality. You are Satchidananda Swarupa. You are Om Tat Sat Om. Okay. How did that feel? Was that hard to do? What's that? It was hard to do. Yeah. We have to dig a little bit. We have to step back from that situation a little bit. Maybe a little reluctantly to remember this, right? Because if it's true for me, if I can sing I am God, and in bhajans, if everyone is going to follow the bhajan and also sing I am God, then you are God, and you are God. And I need to remember that. Even when I leave the Sai Center, I need to remember that in traffic. I need to remember that with my boss or with my coworker, with my son, with my daughter, with my mother, with my grandmother. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're going to turn this around in another way, okay? If you can turn to each other, if you want to turn in a group as a circle, if you want to turn as partners and have just a pair, either way, I would like you to get a little bit more uncomfortable and be looking at each other. And we are going to sing this. You can make a group. You can turn the chairs a little bit, okay? Okay, next slide, please. As you all are turning in a group, I want you to remember, okay? I am God, you are God, right? This is also a manifestation of God in our lives, right? We have friends, we have loved ones who can put a hand on our shoulder sometimes, and sometimes they are the reminder for us. Sometimes I forget that I am God, but it's a different message if someone else puts their hand on my shoulder and says, you remember? You're God. Okay. Okay, next slide. So we're going to sing the second part of the bhajan now, again with you. You are love, you are truth, you are peace. Look at each other, please. You are ever pure delight, you are always full and free. Fear and grief can never touch you. You are Om Tat Sat Om. That's a little more uncomfortable, right? Because this is our, huh? It's nice, right? This is our deepest truth. So sometimes it's a little difficult, it's uncomfortable to share that truth with other people because we're also acknowledging that the person in front of me, no matter what their features, no matter what history I have with them, they're also God, okay? So this is, remember now, we've taken a bhajan that we've all sung so many times before at the center. We've clapped, we've listened to the shruti, we've looked at the words on the screen. But if we take it as an earworm and take it with us, this is how we can use it, use that power of music as a kind of exercise to bring that sadhana into other parts of our life and start to widen that circle for including others and accepting others. Next slide, please. Okay, remember our game that we're playing? Is this God and can I love this? We're getting into larger and larger circles. Okay, we're thinking about people who practice their faith and their religion differently from us. Remember Swami's quote, right? It's the same God. There's not one God that is different for this group. Next slide, please. God is here too. There is love here too. Just a different way of expressing it. Next slide, please. a different way of expressing it. Now, this image I also wanted to share because it reminds me a little bit of another image. The power with this kind of congregation is also that, in a similar way to what we just did, it is actually bringing the energy of God into community. It is showing us that when we hold hands, when we can interact with each other, while we keep in mind that higher self that we're interacting with each other, you can turn a whole room into God. The same power, the same love, the same ability to do the most incredible things that humanity does happens when we bring that kind of electricity of God through this circuit of the community. Next slide, please. So this image reminds me of this one, the Rasa Leela, right? I'm sure many of you remember the story, right? So in short, the story here is the gopis all went into the forest because they were so excited they were going to get to dance the night away with Krishna, the love of all of their lives, Krishna, right? They had that just pure sense of devotion and love for him. But as Krishna began to dance with them, a few of them began to entertain ideas of self, right? Some of them started to think, Krishna is dancing with me. I must be the most special one. I must be his favorite. Krishna is mine. And then suddenly, Krishna disappeared. And the gopis were so distraught. Suddenly he left. Why did he leave? What happened? Has my God forsaken me now? I thought I was his devotee. I thought he loved me. But the gopis, in their grief in this moment, they started to come together and join together in their grief and in their faith. And when you read the text and some of the translations of this moment, some of the texts actually say they started to hold hands among themselves first. That reminds me of that previous picture, right? They're starting to develop that sense of faith and godliness and community among themselves. And that is the moment when Krishna manifests again in all of these many, many, many Krishnas. So we have to ask ourselves, is that really a separate Krishna that's showing up for all the gopis? Or is it their love and their imagination which is creating this new God energy in this group? And they were able to see everyone in the group as Krishna. Next slide, please. Actually, can you go back one slide? I forgot one point I wanted to mention here. Think about this on a grander scale also. This is also how religions get formed, right? In one part of the world, we have people who connect with God and then develop a religion from that. But ultimately, they are loving this same God. Then you have people over here in this part of the world. Maybe it's a desert, maybe it's a rainforest, maybe it's a city, whatever. They connect with that higher self, that higher God, and they develop a religion. It's the same Krishna. But it's just all of these different gopis across the world developing a way to interpret faith, a way to express faith that makes sense for them in their culture, in their area of the world, in their language. But it's this. Next slide, please. Swami says, whatever you see, whoever you come across, consider every form as nothing but manifestations of divinity. Do not entertain differences of I and you. You look in a mirror and say that you are in the mirror. In fact, you are not in the mirror. It is only your reflection that appears in the mirror. When you go behind the hill and shout, "Oh," you will hear the echo of your voice. You may think that someone is shouting at you in the same intensity, but it is not so. That voice is yours and nobody else's. Similarly, all that you see in the world is only your reaction, reflection, and resound. When you understand the true nature of the reflection, you will know the truth of oneness. It's not an easy lesson to maintain all the time. To remember that when you experience an interaction that is angry, annoying, uncomfortable, it's a reflection of something happening here within us. But when we start to examine what makes that uncomfortable within us, that is when we can start to unfurl the flower of love and allow us to love ourselves and others around us. Next slide, please. So, inclusion also means this word expansion. And that word expansion is a word that we know also from another bhajan that we're going to be touching on here soon. And it's thinking about inclusion of the internal and the external, right? It is hard for us to bring love into our external interactions if we have rejected things about ourselves. If we say, I am not allowed to be a certain way, it makes it difficult for us to say that someone else is allowed to be that way. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Again, our devotees from all over the world, different traditions, the more and more they began to get deeper into their devotion for God, the more they began to come to the same common conclusions. This is Saint Teresa of Avila, who said, Christ has no body on earth but ours, no hands but ours, no feet but ours. Ours are the eyes through which the compassion of Christ looks out upon the world. Ours are the feet with which he goes about doing good, and ours are the hands with which he blesses his people. To me, this also gives me a sense of responsibility. Inclusion is not just something that it would be nice if I can do it. This feels to me like an imperative. My goal is to be like Christ. My goal, there's an immediacy and an importance to this work. Right? When we look at the news these days, we're not going to talk about politics or anything else, but there is a lot of division, there is a lot of duality, a lot of exclusion, and a lot of intolerance. This is our responsibility. We can change this, but we have to start internally, and again, think about how we can expand out from there. Next slide, please. So I talked about the word expansion. So the second English bhajan we're just going to touch on. Okay, we're not necessarily going to sing the second half. I want to focus on the message up here at the top, okay? Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. My life is my message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no season for love, no birth, no death. Thanks. Okay. So again, this is something so interesting that we can see in an English bhajan, which hits differently. I'm not saying better or worse or anything like that, but it's a little bit different, what we feel and what we experience when we sing this bhajan. Next slide, please. So with this bhajan, who's the speaker? God. Okay. Anybody else? Is it only God? Could it be us too? Can you go back one slide, please? So interesting, right? When we sing this bhajan in particular, and I have this experience too, whenever I sing this bhajan, yeah, I always think I'm singing, but I'm singing in Swami's voice, right? Swami is the one for whom love is my form, truth is my breath, and bliss is my food. And yes, this makes sense to us also because he says, my life is my message and expansion is my life. Okay, let's go ahead 2 slides here. Next slide. Thank you. Again, I'm going to turn it around a little bit. So I want us to sing this together, but I made one little edit. My life is your message. Because now I want us to think about us. Love is our form. So sing with me on this. We'll just sing each line once, okay? Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. My life is your message, expansion is my life. No reason for love, no season for love, no birth, no death. I don't know about you, but when I try to sing it that way, again, I have a little bit of that feeling of discomfort. I'm not sure. Can that really be true? That love is my form? That truth is my breath? Truth is maybe not always my breath. I'm not sure. It's a lovely ideal, but can I ever actually reach that point? But again, this is a nice thought experiment. This is a nice thing for us to think about, to turn these budgeons around in our mind and in our heart and think about, Swami really didn't want there to be a difference between he and us, between him and us. So I loved this picture for that reason, right? When we look in the mirror, can we see Swami in our own mirror? Next slide. Let there be such oneness between you, between all of us, that when one weeps, the other will taste salt. I thought this was so powerful, right? That's the true kind of oneness, when you see someone else feeling hunger and you feel it too. You see someone else experiencing sadness and you can feel it too, that true empathy. And I can't remember if it was Swami, I believe Swami said this, that when a good act is happening, there are 3 different individuals who benefit from any good act. There's the person who is doing the good deed, the person who may be doing seva or doing something kind. There's the person receiving that act of kindness, receiving a gift or a meal or something loving. The third person who benefits is the witness, the person who watches, right? It's sometimes why it's actually a nice experience for us to watch a YouTube video of something pleasant and something sweet. Even though you're not there, the smile comes to your face. You feel that warmth in your heart. And that's a nice reminder also that we experience the world all as humans. These things like the struggles we go through, the difficulties we face in life, they're not so different across cultures and across people's life experience when you really get down to it. And the core emotions, the core experiences, we can all commiserate with each other if we find that connection with someone else. And when that connection is deep enough, then we really can feel for each other and experience that love. And again, this is that sense of inclusivity. Next slide. I want to leave you with this quote by Kabir. It's a translation, and it's not a perfect translation, but I thought the way that this was interpreted was so just quick and easy and interesting. I laugh when I hear that the fish in water is thirsty. I laugh when I hear that people go on pilgrimage to find God. It's the same thing happening here, right? The fish in water, why should it feel thirsty? It's surrounded by water. Why should we feel that we have to go out anywhere? That we have to go and do something? That we have some kind of very specific thing that shows our devotion, that shows our love for God, that shows our sadhana, that shows our love for the world? It's all happening in every moment of our lives. Next slide. And I'll leave you with this one final thought here, that, of course, Swami is the ultimate teacher, and so he can teach us these things in just a short line. My beloved ones, you are my own self. Om Sai Ram. Are there thoughts or questions or anything that anyone wanted to share? Yes.
But there are a lot of contradictory things which I've understood here, that devotion, Lord Swami is saying that you can have devotion towards me by making sure how you can add value to the society, how you can see happiness in other people, how we can. So I don't think in today's world I can do that, because I really want to devotion me. For me, devotion in today's world is how I can get inner peace, because there's so much commotion going on, trust me. Like you showed the other pictures of the, and you said try to listen, remember the bhajans when you're stuck in the traffic and all. But I really wanted to understand devotion. Quickly, I can switch between those things. I don't think that's feasible in today's world. So can you shed some light on that and say what message you're trying to give to that?
Before I say anything, does anybody else want to comment or speak to that? It's a tough role, yeah. What I understood from your question was...
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe how many comprehended or understood what I'm trying to say?
Well, let me see if I can summarize a little bit. So I think what you were trying to get at was, for you in your daily life, devotion is something where you want to kind of focus in on your relationship with Swami and kind of how that can bring you inner peace, right? But if I understood correctly, that may be a little contradictory or difficult to do if we're also trying to do all of these other kinds of things, trying to also look at a divisive world, a world that seems full of division, full of fighting, full of all of this, and it's hard to bring those two together. Did I understand that or no?
Completely. What I meant to say, some of the message over there that devotion can be that you can be for other people in the society, and that through that you can connect to God.
Yes.
It's not happening. I must say, trust me, what I'm trying to understand is that really devotion? Because I thought devotion is to improve yourself by connecting to the Lord through His message. So, are you trying to say that? That's what I'm trying to say.
So what is Swami's message? Swami says, love all, serve all. Who is all? Yeah.
Every human being.
Yeah.
Or anything on this mother.
Yeah. So you're right. This is not an easy thing to do, especially in the world that we all live in. But we were born into the Kali Yuga, all of us, because this is our responsibility, and because Swami thought we could do it. It is not an accident that Swami's message is in your life. It seems challenging, absolutely. But if we remember that Swami's there in the back, laughing and smiling and thinking, let's see what this brother can do. Let's see what this sister can do with the life I gave them, with the conflicts I gave them in a world that has Facebook and Twitter and politics and war. Can they do it? Can they find me in all of that? Can they still love all, serve all when it's hard to do? And I'm not by any means saying that I've figured it out. I've not. But sometimes when I'm on a long commute, these are the things I contemplate. It makes my commute a little easier. And also, what is not happening when I'm remembering Swami's message is I'm not getting angry at the car next to me. I'm not making more karma for myself by getting angry at someone else. Maybe I'm able to actually think about what's going on in that car. Well, it's okay, Swami's in that car too. Maybe they're speeding and passing me and all this because something is going on in their lives. But Swami's also in that car. Like I said, I've not figured it out. But these are some things that I thought might be helpful. Might help you to think about this in different ways. And for me, language is central to that because we have thoughts going all the time. So why not use this mind, this monkey mind, as a tool? Can we use it to say, instead of thinking about things that maybe don't matter, or instead of mulling over the same problems that we don't have solutions for, maybe let me think about, how can I use the things I like for devotion, bhajans, Swami's teachings, how can I use those and turn those over and use them for tools in my devotion? Yes. See, I already forgot. Okay.
I don't think it's a solution, what I'm trying to offer. It's more of my take or maybe how I function. But if you think about it on a larger scale or even in your own situation, when you have God's trust or you have trust in God, one thing you can be sure of, if not of anything else, is that you're exactly where you're meant to be. And I'm a huge believer of Lord Krishna, and he says that. And you're exactly where you are because I've put you there, right? Even if it is amidst calm, even if it's amidst any sort of turmoil that you're going through, you could be hating where you are, you could be struggling where you are, but I've put you there, right? And the hardest thing to do is, of course, when he talks about karma yoga and stuff like that, it's very hard. So he says, whatever it is that you're supposed to do, you can do it out of love for me. And that's the best you can do. Even if it means replying to an angry email, or even if it means going through a hard conversation, do it knowing fully well that you're doing it for me. It doesn't have to be the other person in front of you, because all you're catering to is that other person's ego. That person doesn't know he's God. I know. I'm aware that somewhere layers behind me, I'm God, and I have that support. So one line that I remember is, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be because he's put me there. Yeah. I could be cooking and I could be thinking of work, but I'm not at work. I'm here. So moment to moment, if you could just deal with that moment, I think you'll have peace for that moment. And then when you get to the next moment, you can think of peace at the next moment. That's just my take on it.
Nice. I like that a lot. I see that also, that kind of perspective. I always take that too from Swami as a challenge, right? Because if we are where we are meant to be in every moment, then I always challenge Swami in that moment. Okay, if I'm supposed to be right here, okay, this is part of your game. What are you trying to teach me right now? And also, if I'm interacting with another person, okay, what are you trying to teach me through this person? Which also helps me to maintain sometimes a sense of respect for the other side of whatever is going on. Yes, you're right, cuts down the noise. That's a good way to put it, yeah. Okay. That, should work now too.
So I think the talk about devotion and the believer, all the other religion, accommodating, inclusion, it's all very easy for if you're a believer, right? What if someone who is our close friend, a very nice person, but he's a atheist, or he doesn't believe in God at all? In that case, how do you, I know Swami, when he was in real life, he would turn so many people into non-believer, but right now, does he talk about anything about, what do you say about those people? How do you, get them to inclusive, or I don't know how to deal with them, I guess, that's my question, yeah.
So I think two things, and again, I will absolutely say, have I read exhaustively all of Swami's works? I can't say that I have. But I do want to remind you of one of the quotes we had early in the presentation that did remind us that Swami didn't necessarily come with a goal of making more Sai devotees, or even making more people that believe in God, right? That was not sort of an express goal of his. And the way I see it, I don't have to change people. Swami is still there, right? That inner higher self is still there. If something is meant to happen in that person's life to change that belief or adjust that, then it may happen. But I think we also need to remember that on the one hand, religion has been used to do a lot of bad things in the world. Many times that is why some people choose to be atheistic, because they may have seen many troubling things done by religion and they don't want anything to do with that. So we have to have compassion for people and remember that that may be their perspective. But on the other side also, I know many people who have no belief in God, and they're some of the kindest people I know. They are people who I think carry out Swami's teachings without knowing it, right? They have that sense of moral compass. They have that sense of love for humanity. And to me, that's almost more incredible that they do that without having a belief in God or religion otherwise. So I think I still look for those things. If that person is your friend, they're your friend for a reason, right? Because maybe you are also able to meet them on that level. There's a sense of connection, of love, and so inclusivity is including that as well. So unfortunately, right, a belief in God in the world today does not mean that a person is a good person, necessarily. So two sides to that coin, I think. Well, I humbly thank you and my Om Shri Sai Rams for you guys for listening to me talk for this time and singing along. And I think there's a break happening now, I believe, so please enjoy. Sai Ram, thank you.